Hello, friends and neighbors. Welcome to Gentry Vintage. I'm Josh, your host. I hope everybody's doing well today. Today we are smoking my favorite personal favorite blend, H Burley Flake, and we're smoking it in the cracked Medico Medalist, the pipe I have affectionately named the crack pipe. I've had this pipe a few weeks now, a month or so, and it was a brand new unsmoked pipe when I got it, and it has since apparently, unless it was that way and I just never noticed it, but I don't know. Regardless, it has them. But it now has a crack down here on the bottom in the shank, and there's another crack right where the shank meets the bowl. And they're not real bad, just actually the one on the bottom is pretty noticeable. But the way I noticed it is I kept getting moisture on the bottom of the shank here, and I kept trying to figure out why I was getting moisture. And yeah, that's where it was coming from. But I love the way this pipe smokes, and other than a little seepage of moisture out of it, um, it doesn't seem to affect the way it smokes. So for now, I'm gonna keep smoking it. I don't know how well you can hear it with the microphone, but we're getting a pretty decent rain today. It is Sunday as I record this, and it has been raining pretty good. We're getting a good steady rain. It's been doing it all day, and pretty much through the night. It started yesterday evening, or yesterday afternoon. We did not make it to church today. The wife's got a cold, probably due to weather changing and so forth. But she wasn't feeling her greatest this morning, so we stayed home this morning. But that's okay. We can watch church online. Uh, I've never been a huge fan of online church. A lot of our church started it. Um, well, for a while they were uploading sermons afterwards, not live streaming, but they were uploading sermons afterwards. And of course, with the COVID stuff going on back in what 21 or whatever, a lot of churches started doing live stream stuff, and ours was one of them. And they've tried to continue doing that. We've been having a little issue with internet at the church because our church was struck by lightning a few months ago, and they've been having issues with the internet ever since. But uh, they've attempted to continue the live stream thing, and I've never been a big fan of that because I feel like, especially since COVID, it's kind of made people lazy. People would rather much rather get up in the morning and uh, sit in their pajamas and watch church on their phone or on the TV or something, as opposed to going to church in person and interacting with people. And I admit I'm not a big fan of large groups of people, but church is an exception. For the most part, I enjoy being around everybody at church, and I enjoy being there in person. That's not what this video was about. I just tend to ramble. So this video, I want to talk a little bit about the differences in Virginia and Burley tobaccos. I know a lot of you probably already know all of this, but for some people that are newer to pipe smoking or just tobacco in general, they may not really know the differences. So I was going to talk a little bit about it. So I understand that a majority of our tobaccos nowadays are grown and harvested and everything in outside the U.S. And I'm not going to talk about that because I can't tell you exactly where they are. I just know they're outside the U.S. and Dominican Republic and uh, Scandinavia and Tijuana, different wherever, all different places, Africa, wherever it is. But I don't know anything about climates and stuff like that in different countries. So I'm gonna stick to when I talk about areas or regions, whatever. I'm stick to U.S. stuff. And well, I'm not gonna say much about it, but if I do reference it, I'm gonna reference stuff here in the U.S. So there are there are very there are different variants of tobacco, different types of tobacco. Um, Obviously, you have your Burley and Virginia tobaccos. You have Perique and Orientals, and of course the nasty stuff. Yeah, I don't even know if I want to say it. All right, Latakia, whatever you want to call it. And I'll admit, I don't mind Latakia in very mild um, doses in a blend. If it's very mild, I can appreciate it. I do not like a Latakia heavy blend. Um, it goes with any kind of tobacco, different flavors of tobacco. Some people love Latakia, some people hate it, but it can be the same way with other types as well. Perique, for one, a lot of people don't appreciate Perique. I enjoy Perique, uh, which is really interesting because I don't like spicy foods, and Perique is a peppery, spicy uh, flavor, if you will. And but I do enjoy Perique. I just hate spicy foods. It's kind of the wife thinks that's kind of funny. So I would say probably a majority of tobacco blends involve Burley and Virginia of some mixture together. Um, mm, there we go. Trying to get her going here. She's trying to peter out on me. So let me tell you why Virginias and Burleys are most commonly found together. So the Virginia leaf, it is called Virginia leaf because it originated in Virginia. I believe mostly in like Southern Virginia, Northern North Carolina, kind of around that region there. And I believe in the U.S., I believe most Virginia tobacco is grown still in Virginia and North Carolina areas, and maybe some surrounding areas as well. Uh, but Virginias are primarily used. I would say the biggest consumption of Virginia tobaccos is probably in milder light cigarettes. Um, the Virginia leaf is a lighter, milder, sweeter tobacco. Um, it's mainly you hear a lot of people mention that it has kind of grassy, bready notes, which for the most part is a lot of what Virginias are. Um, Most of the times when you hear flavors uh, with Virginias, you hear the grassy, hay, bready, citrusy, sometimes vegetation. I can't talk today. Vegetation, vegetable, sometimes dark fruits, a little bit of fruitiness in there. Um, Overall, kind of a light flavor, light taste. Um, you also get a lot of sweet, especially with aged Virginias, you get a lot of sweetness out of it, and that's because Virginia leaf naturally has a higher sugar content than other tobacco leaves. Virginia leaves are, I believe mostly nowadays, I believe is mostly flue cured tobacco. Which, if you're not familiar with what flue cured is, it's it's kind of an interesting process. I don't know where it originated or how somebody come up with it, but basically, flue cured tobacco, which, like I said, is mainly done with Virginia leaf. I believe you find some Burleys with flue cured as well, but I think it's primarily Virginia, and I can't speak for the Orientals and stuff, but um, we're talking about Virginias now anyway. So, so the flue cured, and it's gotten pretty high tech nowadays, but so flue cured is they're hung up in a barn like tobacco would be normally. They're hung up in a barn, and it's a big metal building, pretty airtight. It has to be pretty airtight, and it's regulated obviously by heat, flame, and with the flue cured, you're getting all that heat blown in there, and it's maintained. I think between like 120 and 150 degrees, somewhere around in there, I believe, and but it's sealed off as much as possible, and it's maintained that temperature for I think 3 or 4 days, something like that. Uh, don't quote me on all this. I'm not a professional. I'm just going by memory of what I've learned over the years or whatever. But I believe it's put in there for about 3 or 4 days, and it's nowadays it's all digitally maintained and everything. There's got all this touch screen stuff where you can maintain the temperature and so forth, and fan speed and flue and control and all that stuff. So you're getting all that dry heat basically blown at the tobacco leaf, which is helping to cure it faster. It's basically speeding up the process, and all the smoke that comes out of it, if it's fire, all the smoke. The reason it's called flue cured is because all the smoke is being pulled out into the open outside of the barn, so you're not getting it. The smoke never touches the leaf, unlike fire cured. Um, so all the smoke is being pulled out, and you're just getting straight heat, which helps to cure the tobacco in a faster process. And they say something about, I'm not a scientist or a chemist or whatever, but something about all the enzymes and everything. It helps to kind of speed up that sugar content and so forth, and kill off the chloroform, whatever, and helps the process of the sugar content develop in the leaf and everything. And like I said, I'm not a scientist. Uh, and see, I've always thought, and this could be part of it too, but I've always thought that the flue cured was also a process to kind of speed it up for the larger operations where they can get it done, move it out, move more in kind of situation. That's what I've always thought it was, and it may not really be, but it kind of makes sense. Um, so Burley is grown. I'm pretty sure parts of North Carolina and everything have some Burley tobacco farms as well. But I know where I grew up in Tennessee, uh, Burley is primarily, for the most part, I believe, Kentucky and Tennessee, especially Western Kentucky, Northern Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, uh, Northern Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, even a little Eastern Tennessee. Um, and I'm sure there's Burley grown in other places. I'm pretty sure all the surrounding states around Kentucky and Tennessee all grow Burley to a certain extent. Um, so unlike Virginia, the Burley leaf is a very earthy, nutty kind of flavor, very rich, kind of rough around the edges. It's Burley by itself is I know a lot of people think that Burley is a mild, mellow leaf, but it's not. Um, Burley is Virginia is added to Burley to tone it down, because the Burley by itself is just real rich and sharp edges and just kind of harsh. Uh, I personally love Burley. Hence, the HH Burley flake is my favorite blend. Now, there is a little bit of Virginia in this, but it's not much. Um, I love the earthy, nutty richness of Burley's. Um, Seems like every time I make a video out here, that metal can over there pops. So Burley leaf has more of that rich, earthy, nutty. Trying to think of another word to describe it. Bold, I guess, would be the word. Um, and sometimes, like I said, it can be kind of harsh, rough around the edges. So a lot of times, Virginia is added to that to add a little. And okay, bitter. There we go. It's bitter. Um, there really is not natural sweetness to the Burley leaf. Like I said, it's a earthy, nutty flavor. There's not really any natural sweetness in there. So a lot of times Virginia is added to that to put a little bit of sweetness and a little mellow it out and round off those sharp edges. Um, there we go. Um, so, like I said, they add the Virginias to it to kind of smooth it out, round it off, mellow it out a little bit. Um, Virginia leaf is used. I think I said this earlier. Virginia leaf is used a lot in milder cigarettes, like Camel Lights, Marlboro Lights, Winston Lights, so forth. Whatever brand you smoke. I was always a Marlboro smoker when I smoked, and actually most of the time I smoked Marlboro Lights. Um, Occasionally Camel Lights, but they were more expensive than the Marlboros, and the Marlboros was already expensive enough. So Burley leaf would be something you'd find more in a full flavored cigarette or more in cigars and so forth, something that's bolder and richer, a little heavier smoke. And well, as I said, I love the taste of Burley, and I love that richness, and uh, mm, that's where it's at for me. Some people absolutely love Latakia, and that's where it's at for them. For me, Burley is where it's at. I love that Burley flavor. Uh, and another thing about Burley, the reason you see Burley used so much a lot in tobacco blends, especially with pipe tobacco, is Burley is a lot thicker, denser, I guess, leaf, and when it comes to toppings and casings, for whatever reason, because of the Burley leaf being a thicker leaf, it actually soaks up the flavoring when you add a topping or a casing or whatever to whether it's vanilla flavoring or cherry or whatever it is, that Burley leaf actually will soak up that flavor more than the Virginia leaf will. So that's one reason that Burley is used so much with aromatics and so forth. But it's really kind of fascinating how the different leaves are and different flavors and so forth. You know, a lot of people just think tobacco is tobacco, and they don't realize that there's so many different types of tobacco. Uh, and that's one thing I find really unique about this. I don't know if I want to say hobby, lifestyle hobby, whatever. Um, that's one thing I find enjoyable about this pipe smoking is experiencing all the different flavors and the different types of leaf and everything out there. Um, they all have their unique flavors and so forth. I can tell you in the house, um, sometimes Burley can be cigarette smelling in a way, but I've noticed um, for whatever reason, I know Virginia is more of a sweeter leaf and everything because of its natural sugar content. But for whatever reason in the house, Burley just puts off a better aroma to me. Some people might disagree. I don't know, but um, I don't smoke in the house a lot. But when I do, I feel like Burley kind of has a better smell. But sometimes the wife says it smells too cigarette-ish. But so while we're talking about Burley, we're going to touch on dark fired Kentucky real quick. So dark fired Kentucky. The dark fired Kentucky is dark Kentucky Burley, and the reason it is called dark fired Kentucky is I believe there's a couple of documentaries on the YouTube that kind of go through the process of how it's done. But kind of like the flue cured with Virginias and so forth, kind of like the flue cured, the dark fired Kentucky is done in a large barn that's a metal barn that's sealed off as much as possible. Now, some of them, depending on how fancy their operation is, some of your barns will have more cracks up towards the top to allow for the ventilation and everything. You think of it as like a smoker when you're smoking barbecue or pulled pork brisket or whatever. You have a flue to a damper flue, whatever you can control your airflow and smoke and everything. So the fancier operations will have flues and everything that they can uh, vents and stuff that they can operate manually or probably electric and everything. Like I said, touch screen and everything now. But so excuse me. So some of your, especially your older generation guys, will probably go for more of the draft and everything with the kind of cracks of in the upper areas up at, towards the roof and everything. But so what they do with the fire cured is they basically build a bed in the barn of it's a slab of lumber basically of wood, um, primarily I believe hickory and mesquite or hickory or mesquite usually I believe, and they bring in sawdust and they layer sawdust on top of it because the sawdust will dampen down that fire so it's not just a big flame. It just basically sits there and simmers for days, and sometimes this process is repeated a few times, and it can go on I think for several weeks I believe. But they basically just lay out the wood all parallel to each other and pile the sawdust on top of it, and of course it's closely monitored and everything. And one reason it needs to be sealed off too is you start getting too much draft in there, then you're going to start getting more flame, and you don't need more flame. You just need it to kind of sit there and simmer. So so that's what it does, and of course the smoke drifts up and clings to and soaks into the leaf, giving it that nice smoky barbecue taste that we all love so much. And it's really a neat process. It really is. Now, where I'm from in the Middle Tennessee, well, kind of eastern Middle Tennessee, all the area where I'm from, Middle Tennessee, Northern Tennessee. If you didn't do the fire cured tobacco, um, all around my parts where I'm from, it was air cured, which was barns that were very well ventilated. Um, some barns were open on the ground level. Some barns were open pretty much all the way around, and to allow airflow to come through. And of course, they're tall barns with many layers of basically rails running across where the tobacco would hang from different tiers. And I believe most of the time, for the best airflow, I believe most of the time there's an opening at the east and the west end of the barn, if I recall correctly, to for the best airflow for that. Um, it's definitely something to do a little research on. It is fascinating. I remember when I was in high school, there was a guy that I went to school with. It was, I think he was in my class. He may have been 1 year below me, but I remember every year he would always come around recruiting. His daddy had a big tobacco operation, and he would always come around recruiting people to come help out at the farm and help stripping tobacco and everything. Anyway, that's just a little quick information on Virginias and Burleys and so forth. Um, don't quote me on none of this. Like I said, I'm not a professional. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a farmer. I grew up in the country, and we didn't raise tobacco. We didn't raise any crops. We just had horses and cows. But of course, I went to school and had a bunch of friends that their families did grow tobacco. And my uncle grew tobacco up in Western Kentucky until he got too old and his health didn't allow him to farm anymore. And then he just started leasing his stuff out. But other than that, I didn't grow up directly in it. I just grew up around it. It is an art. Um, I don't think most people, I don't think really know what all goes into tobacco farming and growing a tobacco crop and everything. And it's a lot of work. It's one of those things that, for the most part, it's kind of passed down from generation to generation because it is an art and it is a lot of labor. And it's a shame you don't see as much of that nowadays. You don't see a whole lot of tobacco farms anymore, thanks to the government. But we won't get into that. But anyway, I reckon that's about all I got. I hope this was of some information to you, and I hope I didn't confuse you too much or get too much wrong. I'm just going off of memory of what I've learned over the years about tobacco and everything. But I do hope that it was of some interest to you. And if you watched this far, I appreciate you watching. And if you didn't watch this far, I appreciate you watching at least 30 seconds of it or whatever you watched of it. But anyway, thank y'all so much for subscribing and watching and so forth. And we shall see you very soon on another Gentry Vintage video. But until next time, I wish blessings for all and lots of luck to you and yours.